Tsongkapa, Chonde Sheba, Chonchapa, Yandapa, Sone, Sangye Vishma, Shatsu Dhamma, Dewa Sheba, Jiten Yapa, Tibu Duwe, Gobo Yuwa, Lama Mingwa, Adami Namki, Tama, Songye, Chonde, Yawa, Shakya, Zobala, Janseno, Chudu, Japsu, Chiyo. So, Jipanji, Sanshen, Dila, Gompa, Tebone, Anem, Jiten, Dina, Chuchi, Son, Tetsek, Yaba, Chula, Chanselo, Yodo, Zotama, Yeshi, Gaso, Senye, Dembona, Jaba, Jiten, Soma, Lamewa, Gompa, Chuni, Jula, Chanselo, Senjo Demba Demega Bejo, Sedon Rawa Jala Jaselo, Kura Jara Siva Somaji, Nyame Kinjin Jala Jaselo, Gombo Tashi Demba, Namchi Dembe Tembo, Sano Yetenga Soji, Ishi Shela Jaselo, Tabe de Chandra Wage, Gevin Son Ano Jodama, Shidu Chula Chaselo, Dode Dode Layana, Lamba Lala Dotune, Ege Lamba Yendene, Gendu Layan Chaselo, Yewa Chayam Yaji, Yewa Buso Sobaji, Yonzo de Dene Sange Tebayi, Kamara de Mamela, Yama Siva Chagoya, Yama Lola Jindabu, Duje Chana Kitata, Sada de Tanji Sipayi, Mohanta de Yogi Radede, Yada Nara Shiri Lajuri, Sibe Sonen Rowan Last I have heard, at one time the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain, with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas and their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son of the lineage trained who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight, and so on, until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so on, up to no old age and death, and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas as well, the 3 times, have relied upon the perfection of wisdom, and have become true, complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, a mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. A mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Te ata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisattva. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the bodhisattva mahasattva, Avalokiteshvara, that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Lamadang Gambo Je Tsongkapa Yang Vachasalo Gangil Odro Dredni Kintrao Nita Gamba Rapselwe Zhenyen Jukun Juzin Zekir Nihil Tupa Lekbauzin Galot Sipe Sonram Marim Muntom Tungel Jizabwe Ozo Gunma Buchi Tase Yama Doshu Yondel Som Tota Chirko Nyamon Yilong Likir Todron Dozechin Marim Musel Dunyan Yuku Chenye Chuse Redvinam Dene Tashu Tashu Taso Yutem Luzo Yose Tuvu Shujuan Chudan Chuni Kentre Dalu Minsel Jande Yangwadu Om Aravatsanadi Om Aravatsanadi Om Aravatsanadi Sene Chuki Cherabu Serki Dalu Timon Mubarak Selme Kadan Tenju Shundu Topayi Lodu Pope Mawasadu So
Lam Rim Chenmo, Lam Rim Chenmo, Lam Rim Chenmo, Je Tsongkapa, Go Son To Je Go Ru Sa Ru So, Yen So Ge Le Che Le Ge Hu, A Ye Zhuo Wei Ge Wa Gong Le Su, Ma Le Shi Zhang Zhi Zhen Si Le Tu, Sha Jing Su Wo De La Su Wa De, Tu Je Chen Bo Di Shi Tu Je Zhang, Zhu Zi De Luo Bo Da Na Ro Ba, Ye Zhu Du Bi Bo Da Ma Ti Sha, Yang Le Xin A Ju A Su Wa De, Xiang Hua Tong Mi Jin Ye Nong Zhu De, Zhu Li Yu Mian De Lang Zhang Pi Ben, Se Zang Gu Sa Ni Ni Sen Min Ba, Jiao Jin Shi Bin Ju A Su Wa De, Jia Yan Yu Min Qiu Jin Lu Zhu Tang, Da Wa Zhang Pa Rui Bin Gu Zhu Xin, Sang Jie Gong Zhong Hua Pa Yan Se Su, Sa Mo Ta Mi Ju A Su Wa De, Xie Zhu Dan Bi Chu Ma An Ti Shan, Ta Yan Ten Bi Min Po Zhong Tun Ji, Nian Zhu Nam Xin Hu Qi Su Ma Su, Ga Da La Ma Nam La Su Wa De, Guang Jin Xin Jie Su Je Tsongkapa, Ngo Do Rui Bi Wang Chu Je Tsongkapa, Duo Na Li Bi Dao Bo Ke Zhu Jin, Yao Se Yu Bo Xie A Su Wa De, Tia Su Gu De La Ma Du Ji Chang, Guang La Guang De Xin Ye Zi Zong Ning, Chou Da Tu Mo Gu Lu Zun Zi Bin, Zhe Jie La Ma Nang La Su Wa De, Jia Yang Su Ro Gyun La Da Yi Mi, Ke Zang Ta Ba Zhu Bi Zhu Mo Shu, Se Wei Ju Bi Da Gyun Zi Ba Yi, Se Zi Xin Nian Nang La Su Wa De, Ye Wa Gun Du Yang Ba La Ma Yan, Zhen Mi Shi Ti Ben La Nang Shu Jin, Sa Da Lang Ji Yin Te Ra Su Ning, Du Ji Shan Li Gu Pan Yu Du Shu, Fang Jie Shu Dan Su Ji Zhou Na Ma, Zhang Qiu Ba Du Da Ni Zhe Su Jin, O Yu Qing Yin Ji Bei Su Nang Ji, Zhu La Bian Qi Sang Ji Zhu Ba Shu, Fang Jie Zhu Dan Su Ji Zhou Na Ma, Zhang Qiu Ba Du Da Ni Zhe Su Jin, O Yu Qing Yin Ji Bei Su Nang Ji, Zhu La Bian Qi Sang Ji Zhu Ba Shu, Fang Jie Zhu Dan Su Ji Zhou Na Ma, Zhang Qiu Ba Du Da Ni Zhe Su Jin, O Yu Qing Yin Ji Bei Su Nang Ji, Zhu La Bian Qi Sang Ji Zhu Ba Shu.
介绍的那个甚至上这个干不着，好像让那个那上去，那边上去，各位上去之后，我那个今天讲头发啥可以去那个上面去，那个颜色也给我，我们这个个免得用一些。
The most important part for receiving the teachings, prior to receiving one's teaching, is to cultivating appropriate motivations. Motivation is here, may all sentient beings, may I lead all sentient beings to the state of unsacrificial state of enlightenment. And so it is therefore I'm listening to the teachings of the Dharma to benefit all other beings.
어느 들이 경험 치바 이제 사자 가라 제가 인사라이나 아니 좀 투병 뭐 얘는 시행아 아 이제 관계 전체에在가서 전체 파마즈베 네 뭐를 선제 방지 양도 예스 들이 지는 경험이지.
So then, imagining that yourself being in the presence of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, in the 10 directions, and along with all other, noble beings, and you yourself is then surrounded by all other modern sentient beings.
대체당은 좀 매는 요로 야려워져서 지다니 마시는 거 보고 있어요. 되니 저는 노동.
So this is a way of receiving the teachings. First, one try to cultivate a genuine faith to the Buddhas, or in other words, the three jewels, and then having, cultivated the genuine faith, then one should have a compassion for other beings. In other words, to have a right motivation of working for the welfare of other beings.
이거는 대중이 밑바 저와는 치바치고요. 배는 아주 동해 진짜 신체지 통원이 콜로 초 놓고 지지해지도. 대는 이게 한개 타고도 신체에 밑바잖아. 선bat에 슈쳐. 저희 지소다니 대바 슈쳐. 치바에 치고요. 유 소다니 유전이 잖아.
And there's a great purpose, because when you look at beings who are undergoing, acutely undergoing suffering, and then we have a kind of, genuine feeling of helping that individuals. In the same way, if you imagine that you yourself is surrounded by all other mother beings, which allows yourself to generate an unconditional compassion towards all other beings. Similarly, when you visualize Buddha and Bodhisattvas being in front of yourself or before you, that enables you to, generate genuine faith and admiration to them. In order to cultivate motivations, let's take 5 minutes to meditate.
어떤 게 경험 치버지는 가슴 버셔 있지. 이 사소지 때문에 이 상처 상처를 마스.
With these motivations, one is receiving the teachings, what is known as Jiangsu Lam Rim.
상처 상처를 면하지는 거는 상처 상처 드마세게 돼. 드마세나 드메세는 이 세차이 배로. 세차 가리스 세버싱에서나 미시비 모버세 세차로. 맞아 간에 건강 미시비 오게 요거라.
It is also, the Lam Rim is also known as Dharma, which is the lamp for farther enlightenment. Why it is called a lamp is the lamp has a light. Light is actually, dispels the darkness. And what the light of the Lam Rim dispels the darkness is the darkness of ignorance. And the problem that we have is all because of this ignorance. The ignorance is the one that creates all sorts of problems. So in order to dispel this ignorance, we're engaging in the receiving the teachings of Lam Rim.
미시비 온게 간에 가르치고 해서 나가서 아니 고야 감각이 그거 당시 미용인데 가르쳤잖아. 배나 체디 되지나 미시비 온게 간에 뭐지 쳐도 그러. 시와이나 아니 간에 들어도 두고 아니 대래 셴베기 생지 되어서 이니 담비 추기 되는 주고 있잖아. 생지 미시가 세터다 아니 다 이종치 뭐. 봐. 아 되지만도 좀 터지는 매로.
So if you look at our experience, the experience that we all have, because it is because of this ignorance or not knowing really creates all kind of problems. Because if one knows what one needs, and if you know how to engage in the actions that enables one to achieve what one is needed, then we don't have to go through all kind of problems. The problem we are having right now is we are not having what we need. That clearly demonstrates that we are unable to engage in actions that creates a cause which provides us what we needed. So it's because of the ignorance that actually predominates our mental system. So similarly, when it comes to the mental ease, or the mental peace, is also needs to actually come from the dispelling the ignorance, the obscurations, mental obscurations, and so forth. So in order to dispel the mental obscurations, one need to engage in the studies of the Buddha Dhamma.
네, 추게 추진으로 배조 방식으로 또 추진지고 말해요. 아저기 단답벌 시 따지 쟁이 모습도 보기 나시 지진지 된 차지 말해 내진지 된 차지 아니 뒤로게 나치지 선제 차지니 이거는 단답벌 신주제는 로 생각해 봐. 다 나치지 선제 차용이 될 레슨이제 나는 선제로도 생긴데 다 이제는 따지제 거리마도 내진지 된다 지지 선제니 힘만 따지제로고
So here now the critical analysis is conducted by not only believers or the religious practitioners, but also by the scientists, such as how does the environments of the world are actually coming into being, and how the beings within the environments are actually coming into being, and so forth. And this kind of analysis have taken, conducted by the scientists. However, now when it comes to the evolution of our mind and an understanding of what is meant by mind is exclusive teachings of the Buddha.
당연히 좀 코너라는 거다. 이는 무슨 이거 스파이어. 인터넷 된대에는 맞잖아. 사선주 주면 아니 된대에 전부 선제 됐잖아요. 전부 선제 정된데네 zon데네. 맞도 짜이 남이 봐도 남아 되다. 아니 중국진 받대 비신 제법이 쳐와 생겼어. 남은 주받대다. 맞도 다니려야
So now the teachings that we are receiving, if we were to talk about the source of the teachings is the Buddha Shakyamuni, who turned the wheel of doctrines. And the teachings that we are receiving right now, the Dharma teachings that we are receiving right now, can be traceable to the source of the teachings of the Buddha himself, which begins from the greatness of the authors given in order to show that the teaching has immaculate source.
다 당하는 교바집이 취지 채워서 되니 미시비 미바스의 사선주 되면 가려려서 나나 근데 그 취지 채워서
So then this will then be followed by the next outlines, which is the greatness of the Dharma given to increase one's faith in instructions.
오늘 되게 최대는 가서기 지 티모의 학생 집안을 그래서는 되게 말이에요. 걔를 가르쳐 볼 때는 먼저 통모 등문 제바, 타마 홍화 제바, 와도 무지라니 줄어는 제바 생기네. 주치니.
So then, when it comes to this, how manner in which the manner of receiving the teachings is somewhat different than the teachings that we normally receive. When it comes to the teachings of receiving the teachings of the Dharma, one need to have appropriate motivations in the beginning, and having cultivated the appropriate motivations, and one receive the teachings, which will then be followed by the dedications. And the greatness to the Dharma given to increase one's faith in the instructions. So it is important that if you can memorize this, and because if you have this, if you memorize those outlines, this will give you a glimpse of the actual descriptions of Lam Rim itself. So then, out of all the outlines, the main teachings will be branched out by the two major outlines here. Is the relying upon the spiritual teacher, spiritual guidance, or the guru, which is the root of one's spiritual path. Having relied upon the spiritual teacher or guru, one then vigorously engaging in how to train one's mind. This actually encapsulates entire teachings of the Lam Rim Chenmo.
사실 동부지구 등에서는 추로버드 책임을 남로버드 책임을 내가 그런 적이 없어요.
So if you're able to memorize those first four outlines, which are very important, so if you can do that, then you will not come across. You will not actually encounter. You will be prevented from following the wrong teachers or following the wrong instructions.
배는 맞으면 이제 맞대네. 남비 중에 천년째 가르를 해서 나와야 소나. 동부땡가시듯이 아니 타만들 로그로 생기듯이. 로아. 그렇지. 마찬가지지 동시듯이요.
So you will actually serve as a platform for one to receive the teachings, the appropriateness of the teachings, because if you know those four, outlines, not only just memorizing the words, but if you know the meaning of those outlines, then this will really give you, an idea of what kind of teachings that one need to follow, what kind of teachings will be the authentic teachings of the Buddha and so forth.
teacher 나가 사지고 봐. 또 먼저 저 신이 된비지다 때는 로지다 정이면 인제는 동본지 사지. 또 때는 로지다 정이를 보라 니리. 뒤에는 일본인 비시 교와 당 일본 제단이 비치니 다 동본지 사. 다 일본 제단이 비치되는 니리 안치에 나잖아. 예받제 바당 일본인 증거를 다 동본지 사. 다 일본인 증거들 소리 지구 중문도 대모에 나제리면 나서는지 지구 전에 대모에 나제리면 나서는지 지구 챔피언 나제리면 나서는지 다 동본지 사. 다 지구 전에 대모에 나제리면 나서는지 따라서 시리 지구 되게 상가장을 대체비스 텔로로 보도가 세와 얘네 가르래 대체비스 가라 로봇도 세와 그래가 정말 이제 뜻이야 지구 중에 상가장을 대체비 텔로도가 타바타 대배를 안전하지 되는 대바 다 시제 다 동벌이 타바되니 로제와다 가서 대체비 타바되니 로모조한테 대체비 타래 다 동벌이 있어 다 대체비 타다라 양소래 아니래 가서 동해 대바다 견주거는 견주되면거는 사바다 텐데 하나 주요거는 사바니 다 동벌이 니래 아니 동해 가서 이 가서요 나래 되게 가서 내 지도도 봐 도대님이 상나 마베 동해님이 이번에 산체당 아니 견주 코인 줄에 사바니 다 동부 도대님이 이번에 상바다 송어리 아니 동해 도대 대제 토마선도 도바당 동해 방식머리 방마서 동해 방식머리 말 가서 텐로처럼 동해들만 로차 다니바 가서 견주 코인 줄에 사바 세대 다 견주 되면 제동 좀 뭐지 시에서나 견주 되면 아니 레지 견주 다니면 견주스 니시에서 다들 상조는 정말 시비야 대해서 제바시로도 아주시 제당 맞게 대이바지요 이 견주 되면 시비 가도 되래서 말이잖아.
So at this particular point that we have reached on the chapter of explanation of origin of sufferings, which is one of the four noble truths. And so when it comes to the explanation of origin of sufferings, there are of two. One is the origin of suffering referring to the karma, and origin of suffering referring to the afflictions.
주당 아주 동해 대바스는 계시시요디 고딩이시나 동해 대바스에 뇌진지 대시비소로와 뇌진지 대 가르르서는 동해이라지리 지주 선지 가르르서는 레도니 몽이 중얼세디 레치 선제이 내당대당 아니 지지 말에 가서 쉬인지 내대당 아니 대이 온게 좀베니 지지 선제니 내당대 두기니시요.
So here, it really presents the way the four noble truths presents. It is presented in a very sequential order, the cause and effect, the order of cause and effect. First, one needs to identify what is meant by suffering, and then this enables one to find what is the cause of that suffering. So when it comes to the finding of the cause of suffering, then the origin of suffering is coming into picture.
균종 세대에 나이바 균종 세대 고아지는 거 균세는 망치래서 봐. 가름 망치 균 종안에서 동해 균 가는 종안에서는 영원의 종안에서 내년의 종안에서 그러지. 균종 세대 고대로 수요지
So the origin of suffering here in the Tibetan term for the origin of suffering is Kunju, which literally means the origin of all. So origin of all, why it is called origin of all? The origin of all here actually refers to the karma and afflictions. The karma and afflictions are the origin of all sufferings, all types of sufferings. Regardless of what kind of suffering we may undergo, it's all rooted to this either karma or the afflictions.
대인이 조시에데 그러기 굉장히 사제군을 시에데 녀모 제시 대례서 축하와서데 자이서지 송송으로 녀모 제비치 녀모 되게 약간의 사거리니 제와 관련된 거리 간제 시거리 제와 관련된 거리.
So then it talks about the cause of the afflictions and then the faults of afflictions.
아니 녀모세는 가르래 가서 가서 시작하래 녀모모로 아니 녀모기 쪽가래 녀모기 님이 가르세네 녀모 님이 가르래더라고.
What is meant by afflictions? So we went through that, and so at this point that we are on the chapter of the faults of afflictions.
그때는 녀모세는 로소나 아니 장시 강로와 미시외 신예게 아니 실례전제 아니 선주선 받고 지금 거와.
So whenever we talk about the delusions or the afflictions, mental afflictions, the mental afflictions is it has a functions of effect within the mind of the individuals.
녀모 감각이 짜왔으면 단지 말이 바래. 키용원이 차단제 뒤용제 내서 세디 짜와지서 단지 말이 바는 건 이제 녀모세.
So the root of all those delusions of the mental afflictions is ignorance. Ignorance here referring to the grasping at self or person, which then give rise to other negative thoughts and emotions such as hatred and anger, hatred and attachment and hatred. That is then enables one to engage in the actions. Action will then be accumulate karma that then enables us to revolve within this unenlightened existence.
가서 가서 사제도 녀모 이님이 시비 가도네 이게 바로 도대지게 롱티 가도 자야 선수게.
그래도 이미
녀모 이님이 노는 도대지게 당연히 못 드린다. 네 도대지에서 녀모는 이제 단종 선전종시 수천종 아니 냐진이에 면시성 대제 때문에 수업범 민인에서 대내전도 너코네스제 토담마도 냐베 일동해 첨부터 제송소 수행요에서 되거든 제송이죠.
So we're on the page 301. You're all on that page, right? 301. And so as the second last paragraph. So the quotation begins from the ornament of the Mahayana Sutra. The ornament of Mahayana Sutra says, through afflictions you destroy yourself, destroy other beings, and destroy your ethical disciplines. After you have ruined your joy, you are shunned, and then your protectors and teachers rebuke you.
다대인다. 아니 녀모 라지라 제소나 아니 가르메 벗어 버서나 라니메 벗어 버려. 아니 선전 조세디 제메 벗어 버려. 아니 추진 조세디 니 메게 주보기 추진라 소고 메 벗어는데 아니 녀모니 only 정보를
So what it says here is pretty clear. The afflictions you destroy yourself, that is clear, and then destroys other beings, other sentient beings, and destroy your ethical discipline, referring to the ethical disciplines, referring to the 10 virtuous thoughts, 10 virtuous actions.
대체 되는 메게 배나로 가서 거대고로 되는 맞수 저와시면 가려운데 로서는 메게 주보기 추진 마소 원기 저와시면 예소도 제고로. 메게 저 세들라 메게 주보기 추진도 소매 징에 설에서나 아니 녀모.
So our bad migrations, in other words, the negative migrations or the rebirth within the law realms is happening because of not being able to observe 10 virtuous actions and not being able to abandon, in other words, the 10 non-virtuous actions. And what cause us not actually to be able to observe There's 10 virtuous actions, 10 virtuous ethical discipline is because of those afflictions. The afflictions is the one that prevents us from, observing those 10 virtuous actions.
저기 따뜻한 나시거로 다간지 체 탄에도 유빙 나한테 단답 내가 간지 쪽이지 너 내도서는 나고는 내도로 녀모이 나고는 내도로.
So if you look at ourselves, self or I that is, that exists, in a nominal level, and that particular I, what we call it, I that exists in the nominal level, and if you look at and see the situation of this particular I or self right now, as this particular self or I is dwelling in the middle of darkness, the darkness of ignorance.
다른 랑슈 남의 도비 랑슈지 간사네 파 테바솜바 가로지 파나토 윤디 아니 메바테 세요로 데네 산지데디 베트 가사다 데니 지자 톰비니 나고테 세바라.
So then it is through the practice one will then be able to accomplish what we call one of the Arya's path, either the Arya's path of Pratyeka Buddha or Shabaka or the Bodhisattva. And at the moment that you have gained this Arya's path, then you are actually you'll be able to dispel that darkness of that particular ignorance, darkness of the ignorance. And then finally, when you gain the state of enlightenment, then you will gain a power of realizing or the ascertaining both two truths, in other words, conventional truth, relative truth, and absolute truth simultaneously.
아니 가도 연조돼서 가서 냥지 네바 메시 세도아 아니 메기초봉이 말에 가서 메기초봉이 추천선을 메기초봉이 겨와라서 뱅이 게위르스다 냥 아니 론쇼라서 뱅이 네바 메시 세데 아니 로아 딱 겨와네 냥바 론쇼 메바 론쇼 네가오 근데 요거에서 녀모히 님이.
So this is the faults of these afflictions. It's destroy yourself, destroy the other beings, and destroy your ethical disciplines. After you have ruined your joy, you are shunned, and your protectors and teachers rebuke you.
텔레코데어시에서나 수출마소나 대화 연구 말에 진바 마도나 모셔 연구 말에 수출마소인데 아니 가르래 차당 용의 연구하래 아니 롱 가르사노 진바 마도인데 가르 세나 연구로 그래서 세잖아.
So then what it actually, if we were to summarize this particular chapter, the faults of afflictions, if one is unable to observe to ethical discipline, you will not achieve a life of happiness. And if you are unable to engage in the practice of generosity and so forth, then you will not gain your resources, the resources that you need.
다시 됐다. 송아다 땜베 펜바 생이들이 가서 가서 송아세디 아니 수준 송바다 아니 땜비 까시 주바지 마조아이나 아니 송마 데세기니 땜비게 내거서라. 로 추치신데 중에 담대 주바볼라 그다노기 저와 제게 인생 keneta 자샤샤.
So then you said your protectors and the teachers rebuke you as because the Dharma protectors are means to protect the practitioner of the Dharma. The practitioner of the Dharma should be someone who can be considered as the practitioner of Dharma, must be grounded upon the practice of the observation of the 10 virtuous actions.
텔레 미세기 니콜레시 되면서 랑린디기 콜레시 되기 네바도 랑린디기 소마는 주변 소마 장년바래.
So then, so when it comes to the protector, here protectors. The protector, there are three kinds of protectors who are known as the authentic protectors of the practitioners of the three schools.
간절히 세상에 주비 침비 랑냥스 림바 주비 침비 랑제 림바 냥스 랭이들 조 아니 주비 침비 소마 아니 인지기 다니 아니 신레스 가도 주고 공부 샤루바 예니 손제 제거를 해서.
So then, who are those, the protectors of the three schools? Is someone who is engaging in the practice of the higher schools, the practitioner of high schools is protected by the high schools protector, who is the emanation the six Mahakala, who is emanation of the emanation of Cherisi or the Avalokiteshvara.
그 제세 가르잖아. 주비 침비기 랑데 니지 자와체네 랑냐니 제거로 상주기 세네 니지. 아니 신레스 세네 니지 다니 제자라로.
It's because when one reaches the practice of the high scope, the great scope, in other words, your sole practice is the practice of compassion. It is therefore you will be protected by the six-arm Mahakala, who is emanation of the Chenrezig. The Chenrezig being himself is the embodiment of compassion.
주변 중에 가슴에 대마서라 뭐 데려도 아니 저거처럼 나한테서도 또 수준성을 저거 저래도 수준소 또 이제 또研究 일반적으로 수준 용어도 쓰는데研究의 상반에 또 수준이 자체도.
So then the Vaishyavanai is the middle scope, the protector or the middle scope, and the reason for the Vaishyavanai is being the reason for the Vaishyavanai is being the protector of the middle scope is because the Vaishyavanai is a protector for destined to protect someone who is observing the ethical discipline based on the cultivation of renunciation.
연주기 상반세나 또 수준 너 자와는 일반적으로 수준 용어도 써야 돼. 다 연주기 상반에 주변 중에 랑소 힌트와.
So because the renunciation here is the sole path of the middling practitioner of the middling scope.
되지. 아니 레지 신지 체제세요데 주변 총이게 루자 쪽에 먹이 저번 수준에 저와시만 것도 들어와. 아니 레지 신지세요데 레까나이 신지 가서 신지 제보세 그래요. 레까나이 셰보보. 신지 체제 제보세 나라 그래. 뒤 차례니 주변 총이게 소마서 나라고.
So then the Kalarupa is said to be the middling scope, the projectors of the middling scopes, which mainly to protect the beings who are engaging in the practice of 10 virtuous actions and abandoning 10 non-virtuous actions, which enables one to have a rebirth within the high realms, within the cyclic existence. Kalarupa. So this is very clear.
소수 루샤이 전에 시작으로 지기 니지 조전에 녀선에 비ቻ네 해지기라 아니 조 민중이 상반 녀선에 비차네 니 추춘제 하바도 추춘이 써야지 상마 쇼공이 지래도 나서지 아니 맞죠 레지 신지 체제에서 되지다 맞죠 배발 백일이 와다래 아 체제에서 레지 신지선 이나 가제 레지 신지 체제에서 레기디 신지 레기디 야도 당에 얘가 좀 최저 받았지.
So this is here very clear that because the great scope, the practitioner of the great scope, whose main practice is to engaging in the great compassion, So it is therefore you have a protector who is emanation of the charity, the embodiment of compassion. And then Be Shavanai in Tibetan it is Nam Tu Se, who is again always grounded upon a very impeccable, ethical discipline. So therefore, his main, he's destined. This particular protection is destined to protect the middle scopes, practitioner of middle scopes, whose main practice is to renunciations, here referring to the engaging in the observation of all the ethical disciplines. And then the Kalarupa is said to be the lower scopes, because in the lower scopes, your main practice is to focus on engaging in the observation of the 10 virtuous actions and abandoning 10 non-virtuous actions to have a better rebirth, in one's spiritual life. In order to have whether one will have better rebirths or the the negative rebirths, it will be done on the basis of your accumulation of karma. So then, Kalarupa is also said to be the someone who actually who is the judge of karma, the negative karma and positive karma.
And it can be a session, Jubut Tambaki, Taiwan, the Beji Tembe, me as a matter, two nebo. You must want to change make it chupogi, because a Miguel Aguilera, and also Judo and Yazona, and around Gay senior to be any Jubut Tambaki, Tedagini, two nebo my own, maybe you will enjoy this or
Then it's also says that not only your protectors, but also the teachers, or one's spiritual teachers, or the noble beings who rebuke you.
Rangi Chima Koina, Goluchi Teshawana, Jobachi no Chido, Dora, most Joba Jangimena Yako, Kayachin Chushabra.
So it is very clear that even in our mundane life, if you are unable to follow the rules and regulations, and you break the rules, there will be always the consequences.
The Majimba says on that, G. Sendi in Noro and Chadon Shuchaba in it, Kangai Komaniba Pajima, the Kangai Kolomeda knowledge, Rajin Chabra.
So then you are shunned. So it's like if someone who is being very, negative at all time, either associating with other people or workplace and so forth. If you're always being negative, then you will be abandoned, and you will not be associable with anyone.
Said the Kanye Cheba Massa Shana, and make it Casta, Numoki Debella, Yawachi Jeremy, or Macombiness Jebel.
So then you will be taken rebirth in the lower realms, where rebirth within the realms where it lacks the fortune and leisure and fortune.
And it told them, I told us when you say, Rangi Rawa Kanya, but the Rawati to Tata Yumutuni. And the law, Mugugi Medebi told the poets, Karion Gichonsana, and the Miship of Gichon on your mobile. He only yielded to his own which he ched over.
So then one will be reborn in the leisureless conditions. You suffer great anguish in losing the virtue that you had or have yet to attain.
Just really Jongle is so necessary. Jawashamba.
So therefore, it is, if you look at this, an ornament for the Mahayana Sutra is by Maitreya. So Maitreya is the one who, wrote this ornament of the Mahayana Sutra.
Tata Shanchu Simbi Suchen in the garden you got chosen as you. And Papa told me, Jawashamba over doing a garden you lapin, garden Shanchi Damasage, Zambin Yelpe, or say Tichitero.
So it is one of the teachings the Asanga received from Mahatma, from the Maitreyans, and brought the teachings from the devil realms to the human realms.
that's a good issue. I know. Some of the content, Jala the content chawa. Masu Jubu Tema drew the song Saman and Jubu Tema drew the Tendu, repeat no Jig in the rock.
So it is good to know that the teacher of the particular teachings, because whenever we receive the teaching, it is our responsibility to making sure the teaching that you are receiving, the teacher who taught that particular subject is authentic teachings, authentic teachers.
That's when you see them. When I show you that, you see the patch cuts on a year. Raw Carsa with Tamason, love you, Higman, beat our shoe to go there, see Carsa with Dejo Young. Turn out, the shooting is sure you know the couple of CG.
So then with the next further that we should be aware of the faults as described in the engaging in the Bodhisattva state. If you look at the verse, the Bodhisattvas, Guide to the Bodhisattvas to apply, it's a very clear, unlike other teachings, the Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattvas to apply, so comprehensive, lucid, and very, convenient for us to actually engage in those practices. Rinpoche is pretty sure that you have received the teachings of the Guide to the Bodhisattva so many times.
Deda kene trenje shes, da ke sen la nenshin to gango shio la nyoba shi, tela muzu, tela mocho zoba ne, nemi zoba mimpi nense, teba jilo.
So now let's read to the verse, the verses Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. So let's read the two verse. Begins from enemies such as hatred and craving have neither feet nor hands, and are neither brave nor intelligent. How then have they enslaved me? While they dwell within my mind, they are pleased to do me harm. They are not to be endured without anger, tolerance of angers. Tolerance of them is ridiculous.
이 shedan la so se de decha shedan timu ro nga tu so se wa ina so phun la ni decha shedan timu la so bi nyamo te da la ni kamba de yo ma de la ba de yo ma de ni pao ma de ni pao yi la cha da ko cha ge ge yo ma de es ji wa.
So it says negative thoughts such as anger, attachment, and ignorance do not have feet or hands, and neither brave nor intelligence. So then, how can they really bring harm upon us? How can they really bring harm upon us? So, however, though they are lacking all those features, we become ourselves, and we are, in other words, that we are enslaved by this negative thoughts and emotions. This is the one that actually bring about harm upon us. Nothing else. No other things or external things can bring such a harm upon us. But this is the inner enemies that brings ultimate harm upon us. Yet at the same time, we are willingly accepting and embracing these negative thoughts and emotions.
Tela tindriki gabo tandwa kyupa chene ne zoba chene kontro chi mano tanda kolo toba chene de teda chona be no den no bare no ma che chona gi teda la chi khom ma thoa da zoba che ba da ne repeat ne la ge bare ni zoba de zoba lo bare tera so da.
So then if you keep still following those negative thoughts and emotions and not having any resentment towards the negative thoughts and emotions, that is completely wrong. It is not a right tolerance. You are not actually practicing a tolerance. If you have a tolerance towards your negative thoughts and emotions, then that is a wrong tolerance.
Tate rani le tsikachi lo darwa. Te kante chene nga ku yobo la dogo ya la sona. Nga so kontro shu chenpo chi long bi on ta da. Kontro shu chenpi no sona nga so kontro de la jalten chegre ma do pele chenpa tahi geke tsege ma.
So if you look at ourselves and how those negative thoughts and emotions actually enslave us, is for instance, when you have generated intense anger, and at the moment that you will not say anything but to support your anger and let yourself become a servant of that particular anger, that is spirit.
Kontro shu chenpo long bi on la ani si na ko la yete. Kontro ji japten. Tele do at la pandam de shu yete kanga kari jode jago re nyoma lo do che wo kontro le do che wo.
So then it is out of anger we express all kind of negative expressions. That negative expressions will come out from one's mouth. And the words that you have spoken is not really a good words. And in the worst case, then you will engage in the physical actions of harming others, which is what it really does here is now, it's actually supporting our own enemy, the negative thoughts, anger. You are supporting negative thoughts and strengthening these negative thoughts and welcoming the negative thoughts in the future as well. We may have an idea that you are protecting yourself. You are actually, defending yourself. But you are actually destroying yourself in reality.
Zopa maybe near us and channel de Zopa Marida. Chute Zupigi Zopa Loparis. Lo country Jadena Tandapa and Dodoche, the Zopa Mare.
So this is not a tolerance.
Chuto don't know one didn't know what this on the pay. One time the Kangato and Pachu Katachi Toss and Jimmy Zinga, not to pay the Lombardas and Jimmy Zinga. Manzina Co Shandesha.
So the good thing about here in the Western country, particularly in the United States, is even if you fight very badly, but they really don't get into a physical, fight. Unfortunately, it feels like in Tibet, in certain part of Tibet, the verbal fighting is not much. They don't even consider this as a fighting. When they said fight, they get into physical fight, which is very unfortunate.
Chidani Timogi Hojo Yu no Chu Ketchum Shiachero. Timogi Rene Yu Megi Chane, Megi Mesekin Dino Yu made the Cheva Chambodo. Junzo the Met Timothy. Junzo Rene Hojo and Junzo must Ajuna get. The Cheva Chambodo, Chidam, no chasing it. In Jimmy, not so Sanjay Sona, Mishibachi Sona, Heja Chabro. Then it made the sound again. Kanji here Sona, Mishibachi say or. Then you stay at the Lesona, met the Yabro. Then it made the sound of Kaja, Timogi Rene, your husband said in Mechino, Timo Rene, gentlemen, and many. You think you should bet, not such a
So it is really, you can really see from the point of view of whether or not the person is is really aware of what he or she is doing and what will be the consequence of after engaging in such an act. So most of the time, probably there are some places, in particular in Tibet, and they lack proper educations, let alone the Dharma educations, but also the modern educations. That is one of the faults, one of the downsides of the people in that particular areas, and without knowing their consequence, without knowing what is the nature of this action, such as getting into physical fight and so forth, and they immediately, even one word, they will take this and make it worse by getting into physical reactions such as fight and injuring each other. So that is very, very bad. Let's take a break in 15 And let's read from the third verse, just guide to the verse as well, life still. Even if all the deities and demigods should rise up as my enemies, they cannot lead me or force me into the fires of the unrelenting hell. But this powerful enemy, the afflictions, cast me in an instant into fires so hot that if they met even Mount Meru, not even ashes would remain. So what it says here is now, if you have an enemy, someone who someone who inflict harm upon you, even to take your life and destroy your physical aggregates and so forth, but such an enemy will not cause you harm in your future life, unlike the enemy, the inner enemy, such as anger and hatred. So this enemies of anger and hatred not only destroy your particular life, but which also destroy the subsequent future life as well. So let's take an example of a practitioner, the great practitioners who have engaged in the practice of meditating and great compassion for a long period of time. And such individuals, when they come across with the enemies, external enemies, who's bringing a physical harm upon them will not really bring about a harm upon them in their future lives. They maybe destroy their present, body, but they will not really destroy their future lives. For instance, there have been many great practitioners who have been tortured, and punished by the prison guards of China, Chinese prison guards. So there are many practitioners who expressed not even a one bad word towards the prison guards, but rather they said they extend and have a great compassion towards the prison guards who actually tortured them. So this really tells that the external enemy is not really powerful enough to destroy yourself, unlike the internal enemy.
我做对路易的修行我们多，没见到这个俺是说的呢，没见到这个俺人那些呢，没见到这个来啥物料的，我就脑壳的了，没见到这个来啥物料的脑壳。我做牛毛之前我就经历怕说最开始的那个些，带了锻炼就那个些个了，牛毛修起来当着了，对，牛毛给你们让的嘛是没你们嘛的，随便看嘛的。
So normally, we have an understanding that when someone makes you angry, and when someone says something bad about you and irritates you, and we have an understanding of the particular person who irritates you is accumulating negative karma. That is, yes, certainly that particular person is accumulating negative karma, but you who is actually again trying to retaliate, you have an idea of retaliating against that particular person. You're even more, accumulating bad karma. It's not only the person who is irritating you who is accumulating bad karma, but you who is trying to retaliate that out of anger and hatred is also accumulating negative karma at the same time.
我那牛毛到那些站的原因，日一就把这上面的条件的没不说过来是呢，看这里是呢，他妈没把那个做单的把那电话去聊呢，搞来交过来呢，牛毛一往一电话声音电子上就嘛用了吧。
So here it says, so hard that if they met even Mount Meru, not even ashes would remain. So this is how powerful this enemy is. It's clear that if you look at ourselves and analyze our own experiences, right from the beginning of our life, we long to achieve happiness, yet at the same time, we are unable to achieve the happiness that we seek. So why that is happening? What is the causes and condition lying behind that? What really prevents us from achieving the happiness that we seek?
没人怎么搞把那种的，他就变得他妈前你把个学会去给他怎么种了，就所以我说这个的，牛毛就写来的嘛，都没就写来嘛的。
So all those actions are the product, the negative actions such as battle, war, fights, and so on, are all the product of afflictions. It is also known as the actions of afflictions.
对这张罗送的，空中修没小半年不结呢，没对这小半年不的，没你不的咔咔大头个送的，是吧？ 小半年把的牛毛也你没了打，我看到上星期就写的也在我也上星期把打多少年呢？没能控制3个年的，要写多少了？控制年的。
So, His Holiness always advised us, when someone who is being negative to yourself, negative to you, such as unjustly treating you and getting angry towards you and so forth. So at that moment, it is good to tease out mentally at the particular person and then the anger. You should think about, you should look at the person as a beings, human beings, who is in the nature of compassion, who is an entity of compassion. But you should look at his anger side. It is not the person who is angry, but it is the anger that enslaved that person. Letting that person uncontrollably engaging in these actions. So therefore, if you are able to tease out, if you are able to distinguish between the two, then you will not, generate anger and hatred against the person who get angry towards you.
No, kakasya mutugyantani mari china mazugi shinju majere mado. Pena mechi ilapa ne juba de mani shiso na mazu juba lo no maro. Mani china shiyo juba shibaro.
So it is not that difficult for us to really, distinguish and identify between the two. It is because we are not really trying at all. We are not trying. We are not putting an effort to really distinguish between the anger and the person. That is the problem. We are not trying. If we really try, we will be able to do that. Because let's take an example of someone who takes a stick and hits at you. If someone hits with a stick, then the stick is the one that hits you. It's the object that really hits you. It actually touches your body and injures you, or makes gives you a pain. But you are not really getting angry towards the stick, but towards the person. So in this case, you are actually able to distinguish between the two, the action, the doer, and the object that is, that made the person and the effort that made to engage in this action. So if you are really thinking this way, then you will be able to distinguish between the two.
저 주발로 뭐나 가르쳐서 주발로 가르는 남매도 있어요. 아니 매들로 가르쳐는 매들 녀모시면 되는데요. 제일 녀모만 투사면.
Then if you were to ask the questions, why I'm not angry with the stick, then the answer would be, I have nothing to do with the stick because it's the person who hit me. Then if this is the case, then it's not the person but the anger is the one that makes the person to do that. So you can ask these questions, then trace that. What caused the person to engage in these particular actions? So this is how we investigate and try to identify the person as a being, person, and the afflictions of the person. We always perceive, conceive, we perceive the person or the self, and the mixture of self or the person and the delusions, which then lead us to engage in actions that bring about harm upon oneself and others. So let's read the next verse. The enemy that is my afflictions has lasted a long time without beginning or end. No other enemy has the power to last for such a long time. Given appropriate service and attention, everyone helps you and makes you happy. But if you serve your afflictions, they only inflicts further suffering. Inflicts further suffering, sorry.
당고 저기 백고대 보러 배너로 오늘 되게 자도 자대 나 통만 매번에 단답보다 나를 매번씩 자 가디 콜로 도 버쳐버렸어서 나 주지는 뭔지 제도가 말이죠. 배너로 단지 되게 다시는 사고 유모 도서기 자대 되게 나를 다오이나 단지 가서 나그 요보 가디 차와래라나 얘는 뭔지 좀 들어. 당가 단답보다 파 제마 가봐도 로고서나 뭔지 좀 들어서
So this, the enemy that is my afflictions has lasted a long time without beginning or end. So if we were to ask ourselves, how long that you have been serving this enemy, how long that you have been serving this mental afflictions, how long you have been enslaved by these afflictions, we cannot really trace that root or the beginning. That is, from the beginningless up until now, we have been enslaved by these negative thoughts and emotions, by negative afflictions. And if we were to ask ourselves, how long you will be serving and how long you will be serving in the future, or serve these negative thoughts and emotions, that's also endless.
지테나 답이 다생에데 제대로 다자 세면으로 로차야 카운터로 뒤통통제스.
So in our common notion of enemy, such as person and so forth, can be your friend in the future. Someone may be an enemy in the early part of your life, and that very person that you consider as an enemy can be your best friend in the later part of your life. So it can be, it can be, it is changeable. It can be changed.
파파도 지테나 답이 다생에데라 파팀보다 펜바 조소와이나 수참부 차여요. Yes.
And particularly if someone whom you consider as your enemy, if you try to that particular person, if you try to help and serve that person, there's a possibility of, again serving and helping back to you.
녀모기 다생에데라 파팀보다 펜바 가세 주샤나 실을 동해도 내가 싶었지만도 펜바세데 인제상요 말이에요.
However, when it comes to the enemy, that is afflictions, regardless of how much you serve them, regardless of how much you support them, regardless of how much you help them, it will worsen your situations, and it will become a worse and worse enemy. It creates more enemy than ever. So it is therefore it says you should know the faults of the sufferings and the cause of sufferings, and engage in the practice to overcome sufferings and the faults cause of the sufferings.
맞춰서 소설 카도는 지다다 세부 세장에 맞춰변에 잡아 슈첸버즈 잘라내고 지가 가고 쳐서는 잘라대라더라 몇전 요거 줄을 재우래 콘트롤 지나서는 팔에다가 카드 자야돼 양 다시 요거 줄을 재우래 그 가리 다된 와서는 이모기 제요는 다된 거라니.
So it is very clear that we are really enslaved by these negative thoughts and emotions. For instance, if one generates a strong attachment towards one particular object, and you have such an attachment that you really want to get that particular object, and you will do so putting in all kind of efforts, a rigorous effort to obtain that particular object that you are really attached to. And similarly, when you are angry, when the anger is dominating your entire mind, then you will do all your best to bring harm upon others. So this is a clear indications that we are really serving. We are serving those negative thoughts and emotions, and negative thoughts and emotions are boldly enslaved us.
Ni kadam bin namara gomba ishe ne asa. Nyemo pa la nyemo bi nyimi ta tseni nyebo jebi jona shego sa nyimi sheba shene jonda ta drason nyimi ma shena dram go ye sa do de je shunju ne sumba ta semba yin sumba ta sa nyemo ji tseni ale te pa da.
And it says you must have an understanding that accords with what Kampo has said. To eliminate afflictions, you must know the afflictions' faults and their characteristics, their remedies, and the cause for their arisings. After you have recognized their faults, regard them as a defective, and consider them enemies. If you do not recognize their faults, you will not understand that they are enemies. Therefore, it is said that you should reflect on this, following what is said in the ornament for the Mahayana Sutra and engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds. So this is very clear, right?
아니 사와다니 니모나 모셰바 셰네 니 안에 슌주니 셰바지 니모지 체니 셰발라야 추응바니지 마타야 풍봉가 이로예 녜라서 사와다니 니모나 모셰바 셰네 차다나 소바 강루 지라 제자나 데 대인 코 해시고 코숑어냐도 뭐게서 니모다 토바 예노 소바다 고고바 예노지.
And then also study the Vasubandhu and Asanga's texts on knowledge as well as in in order to understand the characteristic of afflictions. At the least, study Vasubandhu's explanation of the 5 aggregates. And once you know the root and secondary afflictions, then when any attachments, hostility, or such arises in your mind stream, you can identify it, thinking this is that. Now it has arisen, and fight the afflictions.
나 녀모셰고래 세디 당한 속에 깨찬도 보도고래 세나 나 녀모셰고나 녀모세나 네 녀모를 빼나 녀모세나 시주 마셔와 생이게 네 생조 삼바지라로 와 시지 시와명의 종이 생조 삼바지라로 하치도 말래 녀모세나.
So now to identify afflictions, and how can we really identify afflictions? Affliction here is identified as a mental factor that is untrained, or in other words, unsubdued, undisciplined state of mental factor is said to be the afflictions. So there we have root afflictions, root and secondary afflictions. 녀모데 ranjile chewedi shiju got mane mashewa shetungi 녀모데 chewedi zai 녀모데 leyo kore. zai 녀모 shiju got mane mashewa sheba. roa pena linga isoje ko kanga chibo mengi zotungi 녀모데 leyo zai 녀모 shuchimote leyo. So what is meant by the root afflictions here? The root afflictions is at the moment that root affliction arises within one's mind, within one's continuum, that affects your entire 3 doors, body, speech, and mind. It actually influences, your all the actions of the body, speech, and mind. Is said to be the root afflictions. Because God definition. 단 대차 컨트롤 변화의 자녀를 주요 대노는 가지고 컨트롤 쇼 첨부 연변의 것은 아니
지 배나 다녀가 좀 고송께서 메시아제로 엄봉가 계시시나 엄봉가가 일까야 보면 저기 작업해서 와.
So for instance, let's take another one example of the root afflictions, which is anger. When the intense anger arises within your continuum, it actually, disabled your other faculties, 5 senses. You will not be able to see things clearly. You're not able to hear things things that sound clearly. You're not able to do something that is, correctly when this negative thoughts is really taking place in your mind. So then also in the worst case, when an individual is in such a very intense situation of generating a very intense, anger, and such a person will not even feel when someone stabbed him or her. So this is how powerful it is. It actually numbs your body. So here the secondary afflictions is not that, of course it is affliction, it affects your mind, but it's not that powerful to really disable your entire consciousness. So we have gone to roughly about what is afflictions, what is meant by afflictions, what is the functions of the afflictions, and what is the faults of the afflictions. So in the more commonly you will see this the afflictions is what we call the truth of afflictions of origin of suffering is known as afflictions. Afflictions serve as a cause that gives rise to sufferings. So in the most of the texts, you will find there are two categories. One is the afflictive categories, and one is the enlightened or the liberated. The categories of the liberation is category of afflictions. So therefore, if you look at the Four Noble Truths, it says the Kunjung Denpa, which is the truth of origin of all, truth of the origin of all. So here the truth, in this particular context, the truth not really refers to whether it is a conventional truth or the ultimate truth. Rather, this particular truth here really refers to that it is truth, but it's a tool towards the wisdom of the Aryas. Therefore, it says the truth of the origin, the noble truth of the origin of suffering. So here, for the ordinary beings who are what are considering as a happiness is actually seen by the Arya beings as a suffering.
동해 법이도 되는 근육 법이 된거 인시 아니 동해 쉐바셔 근육 방어스 쉐레시 무슨 인지미지 쉐거로 내지시가.
So here, when the Buddha first taught the teachings of the Four Noble Truths, when he turned the wheel of Dharma, in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, he gave 3 sets of the teachings of the Four Noble Truths. First, he said one must understand the suffering, and having understood the suffering, one must identify the cause of suffering and eliminate that sufferings, and then one must engage in the practice of the path. One must understand the possibility of achieving, cessation from sufferings, and then one must understand the path that leads to the cessation from sufferings.
동해 쉐바셔 근육 방어스들이 가서 줄라마 이거 지금바 내내시제 내지주는 방어스들어. 가르쳐서 소용인데 동해 처라서 용어서 받제쇼. 이 동해 쉐네 동해 유주 근육 때문에 가르쳐야 근육제도 방어쇼 어서데. 이봐.
So therefore it says in the Uttara Tantra by Maitreya, it says one must first understand the sickness or the sickness. Having identified and understood the sickness, then one must find the cause that gives rise to the particular sickness and try to eliminate that cause. So here, what it really meant by saying that understand the sickness here really referring to the suffering. One must identify the suffering. Having identified the suffering, then one must try to find the cause, the origin of suffering, which give rise to the suffering. And having identified this origin of the suffering, one must try to engage in the practice which eliminates the suffering, origin of the suffering.
소소기 마치 바우틀라 레가지 쟁에나 아니 동해생에데 레경이 오고도 레생에데 니모데 온데 소고도 진짜 니모데 메고소고도 세디 되게 바우고다 기존에 봤을 때.
So we need to think in this way when it comes to the understanding and reflection on the origin of all, origin of suffering. First, one needs to identify the suffering and what really caused this one's suffering. Then the actions or the karma is the one that caused our suffering. And what is the cause? And one can ask the questions, then what is the cause of this karma? Then the delusion or the afflictions, mental afflictions is said to be the cause of karma. So we'll stop here.
So you taught Maitreya's Uttara Tantra. Is that listed in here where you just talked at the end?
It's not in here.
Oh, yeah, it just says, okay.
아니요. 나는 그 시트 거사. 그때 당어서 받아보라 있는 영어도 속에 제어도 제시 다양한 영어도 속에 보고 주기니 영어도 카드 자기 영어도 속에 카드 자네 말이 비밀 가세네. 실제 단계가 때 되어지 두고니 루트만이 내가 지금 아마 선정을 신경을 써서
So up until now, without knowing and identifying these afflictions, I'm enslaved by the negative thoughts and emotions from the beginning of this time up until now. And from now on, I will never support those negative thoughts and emotions, and I will never serve these negative thoughts and emotions, but rather I will look at them as my enemy and try to have a battle with them and do my best to gain victory over them. And so therefore, may all sentient beings to be able to understand how harmful those negative thoughts and emotions are. And by identifying that, may all beings have achieved everlasting happiness. And may all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas bless upon oneself and all other beings to be able to do this.